Hello and welcome. My name is Ali and I am your host for this podcast. Today is episode 23 and we're going to talk about what you can do in a situation that is holding you back. So what could you do right now despite whatever life is throwing at you? And it's moving from the mindset of, something happens and straight away you think, I can't do anything, I can't do that, I can't eat healthy, I can't exercise, just can't do it. And changing from that mindset to, I might not be able to do that, so what can I do instead? Stop focusing on the negative and rather focus on the action that you can still take and the positive that you can get and do. I guess this came about because at the gym, and this sounds a little bit like we have people injured most of the time, and they're not injuring themselves at the gym, but they are injuring themselves in everyday life, at home, at work, whatever. And then sometimes, and this is what I'm working on, is changing their mindset from, I'm injured, I can't work out, to I'm injured, but there are still exercises I can do. Now, obviously this does depend on the injury, and I always recommend that people see a doctor if it's needed or a physiotherapist. Often, if it's some kind of injury, a twisted ankle or hip or knee injury, you will need modifications for exercises, and there's exercises you should be doing at home as well. But what we often recommend to people is that if they are given exercises, they can do some of them in class. So if we have programmed a class and it's got an exercise that you just can't do, you can do an exercise that you have been given as part of your rehab, or we can give you something else to do using a different body part. So the thing is, when you're injured, is thinking, and you're going to think, oh my gosh, I can't do anything. You can still do something. Generally, if you've got an upper body injury, you can still exercise the lower part of your body, and vice versa. If you've got an ankle, knee, hip injury, you can still use your upper body. A lower back or a back injury can be a bit more tricky. Lower back I do find tricky, and I've had lower back injuries myself, and it can be a little bit more complicated, but in general, you do need to keep moving. And these days, I believe the research has shown, we used to do a lot of rice when we injured ourselves. If it's your ankle or wrist or something, rest, ice, compress, and elevate. And I do believe, and I actually want to get a physiotherapist on here so I can talk to them and ask them. Now, the more appropriate management is to keep moving, to keep using that body part, rather than isolating it and not moving it. That can actually make it worse. To keep moving. Obviously you need to get a medical opinion for that, but in general there's always something you can do, whether it's using a different body part or not. So that's the mindset shift when you get injured. Rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do anything, you can still do something for exercise. Also, diet wise, there is still plenty you can do. You can still stick to your nutrition goals if you've got an injury. You can still focus on getting lots of sleep, and that might be harder if you've got an injury that's painful, that requires medicine. So perhaps sleep should be more of a focus, because you do need to make sure you get enough rest for it to heal as well. Another point I've put down is when you're sick, immediately you might think, I can't exercise, and perhaps you actually can't exercise, depending on what kind of illness you have, and also depending on the illness, your nutrition, it's still there. Unless you've got gastro and you really can't eat anything, you can still focus on your nutrition. If you've got a cold, you can still eat lots of fruit and vegetables, get your protein, whole grains, etc. Sick kids, quite frustrating if you can't go out and you have to stay home with them. You can still exercise. If you're part of my gym, in the Facebook group, we have so many workouts in there, workouts you can do at home. When we had shutdowns, I recorded a lot of workouts. There are so many in there. They're half an hour, some are 25 minutes, but still very effective. These days you can Google, you can find short workouts, longer workouts, workouts with no equipment. There is always something you can find, something to do. You can just make up your own workout. You could run a sprint of your yard, then do 20 squats, 20 push-ups, 20 leg raises. Repeat that for 15 minutes and you're done. You've done a workout. When you've got sick kids, you can still focus on your nutrition. There's still plenty to do. So don't focus on the negative and what you can't do, and you might be really irritated that you have to stay home again, but there are still things you can do while you're home. Holidays. Now, I don't really think too many people focus on the negative when they're on holidays. I usually say to scale back your workouts and just move. So keep moving, try and keep your steps up, but depending where you're going, don't work out at all if you don't have to. Nutrition, you're obviously not going to be totally strict, and I wouldn't expect you to be. Enjoy yourself still, but there's still stuff you can do, like going for walks, do active activities if you're choosing something to do for the day. And perhaps you'll still try and get protein in when you can. Don't stress about it, but if you can, choose something when you eat out that's got a fair portion of protein. Say your partner goes away, you might be thinking, oh, I'm stuck at home again, I've got the kids, I have to do everything myself, I'm not going to get to the gym. Just take a step back, look at the whole situation, depending on how long it's for. Perhaps you can get someone in to look after the kids so you could get to the gym for a session. Do some sessions at home. You can still focus on your nutrition. That's a big one. We do that every day. We eat every day. So it is the biggest part of the equation for health. And we can often stick to it and take some action in that area. Say your work hours increase, and I see this at the gym sometimes. I've got people in routine, they're coming to so many sessions a week, and then they come to me and they're like, oh, my work hours are being increased, I'm gonna have to leave. I'm like, what? You don't just leave because your work hours are increased. You still need to fit in your exercise. You just have to work out a different time for it. Doesn't mean you give it up. If it means you have to get up early, well, that's something you've got to do if that's when you fit it in. If you don't want to come in the evening, you might have to get up early. So it just takes thinking about it, working it out, and programming it in, and then doing it and routine. It does take a bit to get used to, but rather than thinking, oh, I can't work out now, I've got less time because I'm at work more, you can. You just have to make it fit in. You have to make it a priority still. And the last example I've got is if someone passes away. Now, obviously this is not a very nice experience, and you might think, oh, I can't do anything for a week. You know, you could just have a week off. That's fine if that's what you need to do. Make sure you get enough rest. Make sure you're sleeping well. Still focus on your nutrition. You still need to feel good, and that's what you're going to get when you're prioritizing fruit and vegetables, whole grains, protein, less processed foods, less alcohol, less caffeine. If you can do that, you're going to feel much better on the inside and the outside. So that's pretty much what I've got to say today. It's changing your mindset shift from something's happened to me, I can't do that anymore, to something has happened to me, what can I still do? How can I make it fit? What is my priority now, and how can I do that? So thank you for listening. Please share this on Instagram and tag me. I love seeing your tags if you're listening to me, especially when you're out walking. And until next time, move your body and stay healthy.